for 15 years, we've been focusing on bringing three main values to our customers. First, the premium AV experience that comes with signal stability and seamless switching and conversion. And you have the option of using USB 3 and 2, as I mentioned earlier. Another very important value is compatibility. We constantly test the interoperability of our product with the new devices on the market, the new cameras. It's very important for us. And we've also established a partnership with major players to ensure that, that functionality. And finally, you know, at the end of the day, what you expect is trouble-free installation. That's why we have a good team of support engineer, and very often you'll get to talk to the design engineers themselves to resolve your issues. So I hope that's what we hope to offer at INOGENI and the 4KX+ that we'll talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilles. And so what happened recently is that our customers and companies in general have started using several meeting platforms, which was not the case before. It happens that in the same company, different lines of business use different meeting platforms, and that companies have to also make more external calls on different platforms. And with regard to that, Webex devices are interoperable with all those platforms, whether it is from the cloud or from the WebRTC. So Webex devices can interrupt directly with Microsoft Teams, Google, or Zoom. And when you are on a Webex device and you have different meetings on different platforms, that's what the interface will look like. So here you see, for example, in this agenda, you have a 10 o'clock meeting on Webex and 10:15 on Microsoft and 10:30 on Google. And all it takes here is just to press a green button. So we really made interoperability simple for users. Now, that being said, this interop story here is great, but we know that many people also want another way of connecting their own meeting platforms using their laptop. And that's for different reasons. It could be that some specific features are on the laptop, but they are not here in this cloud interop mode. It could also be that it's more convenient for them. So that's the reason why we had to bring a solution. And the solution we're bringing with INOGENI is also part of existing device in Webex. So here I'm showing you the same slide that I showed in the beginning of the webinar, where you see the entire portfolio. And what you see in green here, it's in transparency. You have all the desk family, the room USB, the Webex Room Kit Mini, and the latest Webex Board Pros all support native USB pass-through. So in a case of the Desk Pro, for example, you just pull the USB-C cable to your laptop, and that has different consequences. It will charge your laptop, first and foremost. It will have a touch redirection, so you can interact on the big screen of the Desk Pro if you use your Windows on your laptop. But it also grabs your camera and the microphone, and of course, you see your screen on the screen of your laptop on a big display. And the same happens with the Board Pro. The Room Kit Mini and the Room USB do not have charging, for example, but they have a USB-A cable, so you can also grab the camera and the microphone and use the HDMI to display your laptop on a big screen. Now, what happens with those older devices, it's an older technology, so they didn't have this feature. And that's the reason why we've been working with INOGENI. We also work with INOGENI because we have customers who have already started using these products to convert their existing room series to enable USB. So knowing that they were very satisfied with this solution, we decided to work closely with INOGENI to make it even better for our customers. And that's the reason why we together brought the INOGENI 4KX+. And before I say more about this, I'm going to show you a short video that shows you how this works.
Webex Desk, Room USB, Kit Mini, and Board Pros all come with USB-C pass-through, so you can easily join any third-party meeting platform by simply connecting a cable to your laptop. Using INOGENI, you can retrofit any room series that are not natively built for USB pass-through to enable the same functionality. In this scenario, we are using a Webex Room 55. We've connected INOGENI 4KX-PLUS to the device and installed a macro on the device to enable the USB pass-through as an option. Simply plug the USB cable into your laptop and open your meeting platform, for example, Microsoft Teams. Hit USB mode on the navigator and start your meeting. We are now using the intelligent cameras, high-quality speakers, and microphones from the Webex Room 55. Once you are finished, simply exit the meeting and hit Exit USB mode from the navigator. Webex.
One thing I should mention about how this thing is done. Currently, to enable this function, you need to upload what we call a macro. So it's basically a script that goes into the Webex device. And that script customizes the Webex interface, if you will. And that's how you will see this button, Enable USB Mode, being displayed. You can download these macros for free. They are public, and you can modify them yourself if you want to make your own customization. So go to this URL here if you want to access to these macros. Note that they will also soon be available in the portal where we are posting all the macros that we at Webex develop for free and give to our customers. And now on to description of the 4KX+. Gilles, do you want to explain this component of yours?
Yes, certainly. So the 4KX+ is really, it really converts your HDMI and analog audio source to USB 3 or USB 2 to be sent to the laptop. It doesn't require a driver on your laptop, so any application will work automatically. And we'll show on the next slide how it's integrated into the Webex environment. Okay, so when you come into the room with your laptop running Zoom or Teams, what you want to do is to connect the camera, the microphone, and the monitors to the laptop. So when you click the USB mode, the icon on your touch 10, it will route the camera to the 4KX+, the microphone also to the 4KX+, that will be converted to USB and to be sent to the laptop. At the same time, the HDMI output of the laptop is sent to the monitor in the room so that all the participants can, see and join the meeting happening in the room. There's also an HDMI loop here that will copy the camera to the second monitor if necessary. One important feature is the external power here on the 4KX. And the reason for this is that when you disconnect the laptop, you want the HDMI loop to stay alive for, standard usage of your Webex system. So that's good. And I will end off the next slide to Arnaud.
Sure. So a bit more detail here on how you should connect. This is, in this case, it's a Codec Plus. If you have only one screen, you should use the HDMI output 1 to your screen, and the HDMI output 2 should go to your 4KX+. One thing that's important to mention as well is that you have an audio input on the 4KX+, but it's not required in this configuration because in the USB mode, the HDMI out will have both the video and audio. So you only need to plug one cable. And another thing you should know as well is that you can power the 4KX+ directly from the Codec Plus or the Codec Pro, because they both have a USB output that you see here on the picture that's powerful enough to power the 4KX+. But if you're using another Webex device, you would have to use an external adapter that INOGENI is providing with the 4KX+. So that's what it looks like for one screen. And like Gilles mentioned, the very important feature of the 4KX+ is its ability to cater for both screens. So in this case here, when you have two screens, you want to loop out the connection from the 4KX+ to your second screen. And when you are in WebEx mode, if you are in a WebEx call, not using the USB mode, you will be able to enjoy your two screens. What does it look like in your room? So if you have one screen, we recommend, by the way, to have the INOGENI 4KX+ under the table, not on the table like on this picture, under the table, because that's an easier setup. And in this configuration, you should have two HDMI cables going from the codec, the WebEx device, one to the laptop, one to the INOGENI, and then one cable from the INOGENI, the USB cable from the INOGENI to your laptop. You should also note that there are two components that can work in this configuration, the 4KX+, but also the 4K to USB 3, which is an older device. But we really recommend using the 4KX+ because this component works in all configuration, in single screens and dual screen, which is not the case for the other INOGENI device. So here in this larger room, you will have to use 3 HDMI cables to the laptop and to the INOGENI 4KX+. You should know as well that in very large rooms, you may require USB extenders or HDMI extender. Your AV integrator will know how to configure this. And that's pretty much it. One thing I should mention is very important. So now you can do that today. Actually, the 4KX+ been released last November, so it's generally available. And WebEx device, Room OS, or on-prem version of the Room OS are capable of doing this as long as you run the macro on them. But we're also working with the better integration. So with this integration, the upcoming integration I'm showing you now, you will not require to run the macro unless you want to do something very specific with the macro and do some modifications, or you have some specific things. It means that when you will have this future version of the Room OS and you plug the WebEx device into the INOGENI, you will get this PC call button on your interface out of the box. And then when you are using it, you will be in a mode here where the only thing you'll be able to do is just changing the volume and mute. And if you want to get back to the full WebEx mode, you will have to disconnect your PC. So that's a very nice integration that not only doesn't require any additional macro or script uploaded, but it also has an interface that's consistent with all the other WebEx devices, including the ones that have this native USB pass-through, like the Board Pro or the Desk Pro. So for your users, it's much better because it shows only one interface. Now this integration will be generally available in a couple of months' time, but there will be an external beta available for testing probably during March. So keep an eye on it. And if you are part of if you're not part of the external beta, then I would recommend to join it. Also, if you want to make it a little bit simpler for your users, you can also use those adapters. So you plug the HDMI and USB coming from the WebEx device and the INOGENI, and then you have the USB-C that you can plug directly to your laptop. We've been testing both solutions and we know they work, so we feel free to use that. And last, this is the last slide before your questions. So get your questions prepared, by the way. If you haven't, there are people that can answer them now live, and we have enough time to have live QA. So our experts will be there to answer your questions. Stay there. Regarding INOGENI procurement of the 4KX+, if you're in the US, you can contact BTX directly. And for any other country, you can check on inogeni.com or write them an email to sales@inogeni.com. If you want to know more about Webex Interop and what I've shown in the beginning with WebRTC and VIMT, our solution, you have two links here where you'll get more information on what we support by default with our devices from the cloud. If you are not going to adopt RoomOS 11, which will have this native integration, well, the macros are available there. One thing I should mention with macro, you can also enable USX 20 and USX 80. RoomOS 11, when it's going to be available, will not support that. And if you want to know about the availability of the native integration between RoomOS 11 and the INOGENI, check out our blog. We post monthly. We have a monthly blog where we post all the latest feature releases, so it will be advertised there. And last, some recommended cables. If you are Cisco customers, you may know that we have different HDMI cables. We recommend the 8-meter cable, which the SKU is displayed here. And you should know also with regard to USB cable that if you want to use USB 3.0, this protocol supports only 2 meters long cables, while USB 2 supports 5-meter long cables. So enough said for me. I will leave it to the Q&As. Thank you all for participating. And maybe Bobby or one of the expert here, you've been probably collecting many questions and been answering some of them. If you want, please answer them live. And
sounds perfect. Arnaud, thank you, by the way, and Gilles, thank you as well for the great presentation. A lot of great questions coming in. Bobby and others seem to have been really on top of them. Attendees, feel free to keep typing those questions in. We've got plenty of time to address them. Bobby, how do you want to start here? Are there a few that have been typed out already that would be good to address, or do we want to go with some of the questions that had come in with the registrations? What do you prefer?
Yeah, so there's been a couple of great questions in the chat, such as supported USB extenders, and I posted a link in the Q&A. INOGENI has a very extensive list of supported USB extenders for their product, as well as a control app that you can install on your device to configure the INOGENI devices, where you could change the name of the USB device to match your room scope, as well as provide for more updates. If INOGENI could talk about the control app in more depth, that would be great.
Yes, certainly. Well, the control app is a diagnostic and also firmware upgrade tool that is very useful for the installer. So there are a few parameters in there that you can control for the device. You can disable the audio section. Sometimes that is useful. You can change the name of the device also. Maybe you want to rename it to be more friendly. And you can update the firmware. So these are the kind of thing you can do with the control app that is available, from the support tab on our website.
Thank you for that. We've also seen some other questions like, will we expect the same video and audio quality that we get from the devices from INOGENI's product? I can say in my experience, it's almost one-to-one. The only thing that would change that is your connectivity to the internet and how well that platform behaves. We'd love you to use WebEx, but we understand the world. So.
Okay. Yeah, the video format out of the INOGENI is 1080p 60 uncompressed. So it really depends on your codec. Teams and Zoom sometimes limits it to 720. So in that case, it will be scaled down or what. But we don't do, it's uncompressed over USB 3.
Just quick reminder for everybody, the webinar is being recorded. You're all going to receive a link later on today. we did have questions about availability as well. BTX does have stock right now. We also have demo units available. Along with the recording and the full intro of all the panelists, you'll get a form for demo units that are at a discounted rate. These are for in-house testing and demo purposes, and we do have a maximum of 1 per organization available. We also had a question in the registration around BYOM security issues, specifically in a federal government environment. Does anybody have any insight that we might be able to share on that?
Well, there is no exchange of information between the INOGENI product and the laptop. It's only video content and audio content. So there is no data connection. So I would say that it's a secure environment. Yeah.
And we had a question around international availability as well. So, BTX is the US distributor for INOGENI. For anybody attending that's outside of the US, how can they get involved with INOGENI?
Yeah, we have about 30 distributors now worldwide. So you can contact us directly at sales@inogeni.com, and we'll put you in contact with the right person, or go to our website. You'll see the distributor for your country.
Gilles, there was a question about TAA compliance, which means that in North America, can the product be sold guaranteed that there are no parts made in China?
Yes, they are our product are TAA compliant.
Okay.
There's like a ratio of components and things to be compliant. Since they are manufactured and assembled in Canada, all our products are TAA compliant.
Great, thank you.
I see 2 more questions here. One was understanding how audio gets passed from the codec to the INOGENI device. It really depends on which codec you use first. If you're using a RoomKit Plus, we use the line out of the codec, and that's fed into the audio input of the INOGENI capture card, and that's how audio gets there from a RoomKit Plus. If you're on a RoomKit Pro, you can use the same method, but you'll also need to adjust your audio console to route the audio to that output of your RoomKit Pro, or you can use the HDMI audio using the audio console as well and feed that into the INOGENI product.
Yeah, that's a better method. With RoomKit Pro and Room 70 G2 platform, you can embed microphone audio in the HDMI signal. You do not need a separate audio line. So that's much easier.
I see another question on the room panorama. As of today, the macro doesn't support the panorama just because there's a few challenges with getting the video out. However, we are diligently working on that, and we have a workaround that we'd like to implement. We're planning on releasing support for that on version 2-3, and that'll be announced in the project USB space when that's available.
Bobby, I had another technical one that came through with registrations. This was also around audio. Do the macros installed in Cisco devices play any role to increase or decrease Cisco mic gain after enabling USB pass-through?
So that's a great question. When it comes to mic gain, we just disable acoustic gain control on the microphones, and we tend to let the app take care of that. Some devices don't have acoustic gain control, but when it comes to input levels, we leave it at the same levels that you have it configured. We just disable the input gain control.
All right, great. I have a couple other technical ones here that I'll fire off if that's okay. These are from registrations. One was about the USB pass-through when the system reboots. Is it still functioning correctly? Are there any issues there?
That's a great question. So we had to develop a workaround to preserve your system's normal WebEx and SIP use. So when you install USB mode for the first time, you'll notice another macro get installed called memory storage, and that's where we preserve your original configuration. And when USB mode boots, whether it be the macro engine restarting or the endpoint restarting, it's going to recover the state in which it was in previously. So if the endpoint restarts during USB mode, it's going to recover in USB mode, or if it was outside of USB mode, it's going to recover your normal configuration. So we've put in a lot of work to make sure that we minimize the impact of your system's configuration being disrupted for normal use.
That's clever. This next one has 3 exclamation points at the end, so I'm just gonna warn you. This person's asking, is Cisco Webex RoomKit with Room OS software with INOGENI 4KX+ working in single screen mode? In lab, it only works with dual screen.
I'm not sure if I understand the question. So Enrico, do you want to touch on that? Do you
Yeah, so I'll answer that. When you are using your room kit with a single screen and you're not in USB mode, part of the instructions is you're supposed to go into the web interface and set your system for single screen mode. That way it'll operate normally. Then when you press the USB mode button, it will temporarily set it for dual screen mode because we have to use the second output to get self-view into the INOGENI device. So that's temporary. So while you're in USB mode, it will actually be in dual screen mode. But then when you exit USB mode, it returns to single screen mode for normal operation. Does that answer the question?
I believe it does. Yeah, thank you, Enrico. Okay, so Bobby, maybe if you're able to kind of scroll through some of the other Q&As, I know there was a lot of them. And in the meantime, I did have another almost categorical question here around global supply issues and around support, technical support for INOGENI. Just wondering, people are wondering how confident we are that we can get these products and how they can be supported technically.
Okay. Well, about this, availability is through BTX in the United States. About availability, about technical support. So it's very important for us, the quality of the technical support and the availability. So we have our technical support guys are engineers and very often design engineers that know very well our product. So that's how we support our customers.
And to add to that, BTX has also well-trained engineers in the INOGENI products. So you could try us, work with us as a first level, and then we would work with INOGENI as well if there's something beyond that.
Yeah, also we have documentations. It's our roles to develop documentation for our distributor, for our website, to support people. So each time we get questions or specific problem that we solve, we put that on the knowledge base, like a Q&A and a constant Q&A information. And it's a part of our responsibility also to train worldwide our distributor when it's needed for specific technical issues.
All right, great. Bobby, any new questions that popped up in the Q&A we might be able to address?
I was backtracking to see if any ones that we missed. One was a question about Room OS 11 and when that might be GA'd. I was told tentatively that the USB experience would be GA'd around June timeframe. However, that's subject to change. But there will be a beta before that. So as soon as the beta is available, you can find that at beta.webex.com. What else? Let's see. And there was questions about the dongles. Enrico, the two dongles that we have in our deck, was there? Do you have any opinion on those? Were they tested heavily by you, or?
You talking about the USB-C dongles?
Yeah, the Mac and the Windows-based one.
Yeah, no, those are the Windows-based one was tested by INOGENI, and the Mac one is a Mac one. We all know it works. So those two dongles can be used reliably for, because there's a lot of computers now that just have USB-C, and we don't have a single USB connection to the INOGENI or any capture device, any third-party capture device at this time. You need to have a separate HDMI run to the codec and a separate USB run to the capture device. So those two dongles enable you to use the USB-C computer. Just plug in the one dongle that has HDMI and USB already connected to it. Makes it very simple. They've both been tested and they both work.
Thank you, Enrico. And another question on, is there a different INOGENI device for the room kit, other rooms versus the 4KX for the Pro and the Plus? I can say that the 4KX Plus will work on all of the room kits. However, this project spanned well before the debut of the 4KX Plus, and if you look through INOGENI's products, nearly every one of them that converts HDMI to USB work fantastic, and they're very rugged. I've used the 4KX 3.0, and I'm pretty sure that even their switchers, the Share 2U will even work. So there's a lot of variety in your choice. However, when it comes to the Room OS solution, the intent is that you'll be using the 4KX Plus, so that way there's a proper line of support.
Yeah, and also it supports two screens, so it's always better, right? Because you don't, God knows what will happen with those rooms if you want to upgrade them or what, then it would still work.
Yeah, so to be exact, the 4KX-USB 3 works with all of our systems, and it supports dual screens, but it has to have power all the time, which means you may need a USB hub. The 4KX keep me honest here, 4KX the 4K2 USB 3, sorry. The 4K2 USB 3 does not have a loop through. It does not have an audio input. It works with the Pro platform and the Room 70 G2, but it does not have an audio loop, a video loop through. So those three models, the 4KX USB 3, the 4K2 USB 3, and the new 4KX-Plus all work with our products. And the idea is that the 4KX-Plus is guaranteed to work with everything. And so that's the single SKU that we recommend. Now, I want to point out that if you buy a Lightwear SKU, it will include the 4KX USB 3, just as a side note.
They have some questions, and I think Gilles and Arnaud or Enrico can answer for a different reason, but there's different questions about the firmware update. Is it work on the OS 11? So maybe on the Gilles side first, and after that on Cisco side. So how it works, the firmware update. For now, the product work with everything. Everything is okay. But for future updates, how it works for the INOGENI products, and after that, some other question is how to work the macros. How to upload the macros. It was from the Q&A.
Yeah, well, the INOGENI products are upgraded through an application, which is the control app running on Windows or Mac. So through the USB connection, you can upgrade our products. We have firmware upgrades sometimes because they are, you know, always new cameras and new devices. So we try other ways to be compatible with everything. So it happens. But currently for this application, I don't foresee upgrades, firmware upgrade that would be necessary. But if ever, it's very easy. It's all on the website. I mean, it will detect automatically if a new firmware is available, is required.
Yeah, and for instructions about installing the macros, we're in the process of moving documentation over to roomos.cisco.com, which will mean that anybody can go to a website, access all the documentation. We are working on, we already have a document for setting up the web interface of the codec correctly. And what we're missing is a simple document on, well, how do you actually install the macros, right? So those are things that we intend to get done sooner than later so that you have a complete set of instructions that are easy to follow. We have about 80% of it there now.
As for RoomOS 11, removing the macro, I don't believe the native experience is going to disable the macro. So what I do know is that the RoomOS experience is going to be a configurable option on the endpoint, and it's going to be off by default. So if you want to transfer over to the RoomOS native experience from the macro, you'd simply disable the macro, delete the UI extensions that were provided through the macro, such as the enable and disable buttons, and then you would turn on the native experience and the configuration of the endpoint. We got another question on currently we do have USB pass-through for Vadio and Magwell. What's different about this solution? Yeah, there's a lot of USB capture devices. What I enjoy specifically personally about INOGENI is the ability to change the name of the USB device. So that way you can have consistency with your customers and make sure that you can line your documentation up properly. So some USB devices don't let you change that name, so you might have a vague set of terminology. Some are clean, some are just the model number and everything. So to be able to have that control when you first set up the space, and you can have it match whatever you need for your customers to align to is a really neat feature. And their app is easy to use, it's intuitive, and has all sorts of other controls, such as selecting a resolution, testing the device. I don't have too much experience with Vadio Magwell, but Enrico, you've used most of those products. Do you have anything you'd like to highlight about them and why we're doing a session with INOGENI?
Yeah, so we've tested several devices. The Magewell is another inexpensive product, but it requires a cable for audio
Attenuation.
Attenuation, thank you. So you have to order two parts. It's priced similarly to the INOGENI. Everything else is more expensive. I started with Vadio because they've been doing AV bridges for a very long time. So that's an excellent product. The Extron product is the most expensive at about $3,300, and it doesn't support USB pass-through at 4K. So it's a limitation right there. It's very expensive. So for the price range, your INOGENI is in the lower segment of the price range at a very excellent product. And the Magewell is similarly priced, but it requires this additional cable. If you don't have it, you're out of luck. And then the other products that we've tested work but are more expensive. There's also a Crestron product that's new that probably works fine, but we haven't tested that. So when it comes to capture devices, there are a variety. But we purposely chose INOGENI for a variety of reasons. I think my personal opinion is that they're the best. And I worked personally to bring Jill into the whole deal with Arnaud and get everything moving. because I thought it was the best choice, and we've really enjoyed working with them. So, you know, our recommendation is to use INOGENI. We will be supporting it natively. However, if you are using a third-party device, we will continue to publish macros for those. So you're not out of luck if you're using, you know, an Extron or a Magewell or something like that.
Okay. If I can add something, thank you, Enrico. I appreciate very much your support. But the nice feature also that we did specifically for this application is to add an external power to the device for powering the HDMI loop. So that's important. You don't need, well, some more expensive product already have that, but you know, for a simple device, it's a unique feature. And also, I want to insist again that the fact that you can use USB 2 with the internal NJPEG encoder for cheaper and more reliable extension with, you know, very minor loss of quality. It's another important feature, I think, for our devices also.
Great. I collected a couple more questions I don't think we've addressed yet. One is about audio latency compared to video. Could anybody speak to that?
I haven't seen any consistent problems. I've heard reports about Microsoft Teams where there's some problem with lip sync, but those have been sporadic. For the most part, lip sync works fine. So I haven't heard of any, like, it's a big problem here and it's widespread. It's just the occasional problem, and mostly with Microsoft Teams. But as far as generally speaking, lip sync is not really an issue.
Okay, good to know. Another question was about it's how would I go about wiring in the 4KX-PLUS if I already have the room kit going through an AV rack and matrix switcher?
Well, we have published wiring diagrams. So if you've already got a matrix switcher involved, you're going to have to kind of edit the diagram to fit your particular environment. But we do have wiring diagrams published for all the devices.
Okay, great. And I also saw a couple people asking about demo units. Everyone attending today's webinar will receive an email later today, and it's going to include a few things, recording of the webinar. It's also going to include a form for the demo unit. We have many available. We are keeping it to one demo unit per organization, and you'll see all the details in that email later today.
I have a question from the Q&A that could be interesting. People talk about intelligent camera, smart camera, AI, things like that. So they ask if it's going to reach the laptop or not. So maybe explain, Enrico and on Gilles' side, how it works. I know they have some component and intelligence features. They are inside of the camera itself. After that, it's just pushing image. Maybe some others are related to the computers. So maybe you could explain.
I love this question because the way we designed it is to use self-view. There's a couple of different ways to get a video image from a codec into a capture device. We chose to use self-view, which means that if you have a SpeakerTrack 60 camera, a quad camera, you have a quad camera plus 2 or 3 PTZ 4K cameras, you have a solution that uses multiple codecs and multiple quad cameras, you will always get the automated camera behavior through the capture device when you make a Teams or a Zoom or whatever call. It'll always work because we're using self-view as the mechanism. So you'll get all of the advanced camera behaviors whenever you use the capture device, even if it's a Zoom call or a Teams call. That's one of the great things about this technology.
And to add to Enrico's point, self-view also allows any existing customizations we're not aware of that a customer or partner may have already implemented, such as main source compositing. That's something we could never really predict. And we've also seen many questions in the community about, how do I see my self-view if self-view is being used? You would just rely on the platform. Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and other calling platforms have their own self-view feature, and we recommend just using that.
Yeah, that's correct. If you're using, for example, if you have a single screen RoomKit Pro, or I'm sorry, single screen RoomKit, and we're using the second output to get self-view over to the INOGENI device or whichever capture device. On your screen, you will see your laptop. You won't see the self-view image. But you can always bring up self-view on Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whichever and see your own camera image. And that will be a true reflection of all the multi-camera behaviors. So it's not a problem. You'll always be able to see what your camera is doing.
Any plans to convert USB to USB-C? Some laptops only use USB-C inputs. Would have to convert twice in this case.
Yeah, that's where we need the dongles. And the short answer is that on all of the devices that natively support USB-C mode, USB pass-through mode, for example, the Desk Pro, the Desk, and the Board Pro, they all support a single USB-C cable now. The RoomKit Mini, you need to have a separate HDMI cable and a USB cable, because that was the first one we did. But all the newer products support just a single USB-C cable. However, for this technology, we're using RoomKits, RoomKit Plus, RoomKit Pro, which do not have native USB pass-through, and we have to use a capture device. We need that dongle, so that you have a USB-C dongle that has both an HDMI and a USB connector on it. And those, again, are illustrated in the drawings. We have, if it's a Mac, you use the Mac supplied one, and if it's a PC, you use the StarTech one. So that's your solution for a USB-C device. You just plug that one adapter into your USB computer or laptop, and it already has the HDMI and USB-C cables connected to the adapter.
I see. Okay, great. The last question I have here from the registrations is around a dedicated PC setup. This person says, I want to see a solution for a C-suite executive who's not going to be bringing a laptop in.
Yes. Yeah, that's not a problem at all. If you're familiar with the RoomKit Mini and you have a Room PC, it's a problem right now because you cannot exit USB pass-through mode with a Room PC and a RoomKit Mini. That's being addressed. But that does not affect our technology at all, because we have a button on the navigator or the Touch 10 to enable or disable USB-C mode. So if you're using a permanently attached Room PC, it'll work just fine. You enable USB-C mode to turn on the PC and use it for Teams or Zoom or whatever. And then you disable USB mode to use the codec for a regular SIP or WebEx call. So for a Room PC with this technology, it's not a problem. It works just fine.
Okay, great. Bobby, I know you've been good enough to scroll through the Q&A a little bit here. It seems like we've gotten to most, if not all, of the questions. Have you spotted any that we might have skipped over?
I did see one that John touched upon about seeing a presentation on two screens. So just using the macro in INOGENI out of the box, you won't really be able to take advantage of dual screens because keep in mind this is a workaround that's largely community driven. So we did the best what we can with the robust API that the endpoint supports, as well as the clean solution that INOGENI offers to create this functionality. But if you needed to get into a dual display option, We are looking at what we could do with the Room 70 in the Codec Pro, as that has 3 video outputs. So out of the box, we could potentially do a dual display option where you can have a computer with 2 HDMI sources being sent to the codec. But there's also all sorts of other solutions you can do if you were to incorporate a more robust matrix switcher into your design. Something you definitely want to talk over with your integrator and partner, and make sure you have a clear understanding of what you need, and that way they can help you build that.
And what he's referring to there is dual screen support for Zoom, where you can have actual 2 screens on a Zoom call. If you have a dual-headed computer and you join a Zoom call, you can see content on one screen and the participants on the other. I believe Microsoft Teams supports this as well. So with the RoomKit Pro platform or Room 70 G2, yeah, you can do that, but we haven't written the macro for it yet. So it would take some customization.
And there's another question coming in from Lee Walker. Is there a way to auto detect when a USB system cable is connected? Right now, no, and I'm not sure if it is possible with the current solution. However, there's a whole bunch of USB solutions out there. One top of mind would be Lightware's UCX platform, which could replace the dongle and provide a single cable solution, but it also has a room controller built into it and can detect when a USB source is connected. So as I noted in the Matrix example, working with your integrator and partner, there's solutions out there to help create those experiences.
Bobby, isn't there like HDMI detection that you had mentioned for that?
There is HDMI detection, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we understand that USB is also connected. So we can always know when a presentation is sharing, but we don't know if they're intending to use USB. But yeah, there's many integration points, so maybe we can have a chat offline to see what we could do in the future.
Yeah, and the Lightware LShare 1 and LShare 2 both support that kind of functionality. They still require a capture device, and they both include the INOGENI 4K USB 3. So that would be your solution for a multiple codec solution where you want to have more than one laptop or a room PC and a laptop being able to use USB pass-through. You would use the INOGENI USB, let me get this straight, 4K USB 3 in addition to the Lightware switcher. And we haven't written the macros for that yet, but macros can be written to control that.
Mm-hmm. And that question was kind of two-part. It also mentions zero touch controls. Now, at the end of the day, even with automatic selection, there's still probably going to have some touch if you want to still use the system in a traditional WebEx call versus USB mode. However, WebEx is always innovating, and the new WebEx Assistant Skills platform might be that answer if you wanted to build another layer of integration on top of that. I can imagine you connect USB and that reaches out to a WebEx Assistant Skill saying, hey, are you joining a WebEx call or did you want to use USB? And you can create that touchless experience using the WebEx Assistant Skills platform.
And you would just say yes or no, right?
Yeah. But I don't know if we have enough bandwidth between John and Rico and I to build that.
Right.
All right, everybody. We are at the end of the hour, so we need to let everybody get on with the rest of their day. Thank you to everybody for coming and spending time with us today. Thanks to our partners at INOGENI. Huge thanks to everyone at Cisco and WebEx for making the time here and jumping on. You will receive an email later on today with a recording, with the demo form, and with an intro of everybody on today's call. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.